Today we're looking at toroidal transformers for use with an audio amplifier producing about 120 watts or maybe more into 8 ohms and round about 200 watts into 4 ohms. Before your very eyes here you see two transformers. They're both made in China, but this one comes from China directly from a company on AliExpress. This one, which is also made in China, comes from Farnell here in New Zealand. Now, the reason I'm going to talk about these is because of a couple of interesting things. This cost about $138 delivered to New Zealand. This one came from New Zealand, not directly of course, but via Farnell, which is now called Element 14 or some silly name, but it's basically Farnell. This cost $80 delivered, and they're both 500 watt ratings. Now you can already see this one is somewhat smaller in diameter, but is slightly higher than this one. Bearing in mind that that's got the mounting bracket on, and this one I haven't put the mounting bracket on yet, but it's a very similar arrangement. So before we go any further, let's just see how much they weigh. First of all, the Chinese special, and that's coming in at near as damn it 3 kilograms. Now the Farnell one, 4.27 kilograms, so weighs, well, considerably more, and that's without the mounting brackets and things on it, which will probably add a few grams, I expect. This is the spec printed on the side of the Farnell transformer, and it says 500 VA. The secondary is 35/035, and there quite plainly it shows you 7.14 amps. Now if you do the mathematics, volts times amps, you get nearly 500, well, you do get 500 watts. So the specification of this, even though it's made in China, I would say was honest. Now this is the one from China, and the only difference is really, which you would have to consider, it's the primary is tapped at 220 volts, and that means when you've got 240 volts going into it, you can add a volt or two to the secondary windings. Now all these voltages and things are going to be off load, so you would expect them to be slightly higher. But the reason I bought this particular one is they didn't have, ironically, a 35/035. But this does have a couple of advantages. You'll see you can also get from this on separate isolated windings 5 volts, 10 volts and 24 and 23 volts. Now that is absolutely perfect, because most of the amplifier projects that I've been doing so far require an external AC supply for powering various items in it, speaker protection board, and but it's at a minimal current. But this transformer in that respect is perfect, even though it cost almost double that of the Farnell transformer. It's almost impossible to buy transformers directly from China with 240 volt primaries on it. And as you will see by this, there's no mention of its wattage anywhere. It's claimed to be 500 watts. This is the supplier that I purchased the Chinese transformer from. It does say on there, if you read the text, 6 kilograms of pure copper ring cattle toroidal transformer. Well, as you know from what I measured, it's a long way off 6 kilograms. But it does mention on there the various voltages and you can see the price that I paid for it in New Zealand dollars. It does say peak 500 watts. Now that's a long way off continuous, isn't it? It's a very versatile transformer, but probably not 500 watts. I think that's a little optimistic, but that's the choice you have. There's no way of finding out because, as I said, the manufacturer has no inclination to reply to my inquiry as to the actual amperage rather than a fictitious peak 500 watts. Now, providing all these extra wires don't all short out, they should be all right. We've gone across the secondary of the higher voltage side. So I close the trap and we've actually got 38.6 volts, and that's supposed to be 36 volts. Now obviously it is off load and you would expect the transformer to sag a little bit on load, but saying that, these transformers are big, and if they are 500 watt rating, the voltage drop is going to be comparatively small because of the low resistance of the windings. Let's just shut that off. So we now have the Farnell hooked up and a lot less wires, because all you've got is plus 35 volts, centre tap minus 30, well they're both plus obviously because it's AC, and that's giving 38 volts as well. So it's near as damn it the same as the other transformer, even though 230 volts is going into this. But I would suspect this will genuinely give you 500 watts, whereas the Chinese one, which costs double, will not give 500 watts. That's my opinion. I've actually tried to contact the manufacturers of it because their address is printed on the side of the transformer, and 2 weeks later I've not had the courtesy of a reply. So they cleared. I did point out that this would be on my YouTube channel, but that didn't seem to impress them at all. So I've just been completely ignored, and this is what I find about many of the products you buy from China. You're on your own. Once you've bought it, you're on your own. If it goes wrong, chuck it in the bin. The mounting of these transformers is slightly different. This comes as you see it, with the mounting kit already on, and you secure it with 4 nuts and bolts on the transformer. You can obviously loosen this bolt and rotate the transformer because, as you're probably aware, these transformers have a very low magnetic field. But often where the wires come out, or at some point in the transformer, it spews out a lot of radiation, or magnetic field if you like, not radiation. So if you've got it in fairly close proximity to electronics, it's desirable to be able to rotate the transformer and null that out. So with this one you would have to undo the bolt and then rotate the transformer on there. The Farnell one is slightly different insofar as you have 2 rubber gaskets. One goes on the bottom like that to stop the winding shorting on the chassis. The other one goes on the top after manipulating the cables, and that metal plate goes on there, and then the bolt goes through the middle, and you only need one hole in your chassis, and you just mount it with those. There's various spring washers and things like that. It's virtually the same idea. The only thing is, with only one bolt, if you're using an aluminium chassis, it's a lot of weight for that one bolt, and I've known them actually pull through the bottom of the chassis. So my conclusion is basically buying big transformers via AliExpress or Banggood or any of those people are not really cost effective. And it's not because they're giving you a high price. This one was sent post free, but we all know that means the price is inclusive because no one's going to send. You've seen how much they weigh, and it looks like buying single items directly from China in the form of big transformers is not cost effective. I got this one from Farnell. It was delivered post-free, and it was here the day after I ordered it. I didn't have to wait 3 weeks to come from China. So it's unusual to say that, because usually electronic components, we all know how much they cost from AliExpress, which is my favourite, by the way. I'm not a great lover of Banggood. I find that generally they tend to be a bit more expensive for the same item, and I think AliExpress has a better range of products, quite honestly. But that's my personal opinion. I know a lot of people like Banggood, and I have shopped with them in the past with no problems. So in the upcoming videos, I shall be choosing one of these transformers. Oh, incidentally, I did mention that the Chinese delivered one has extra voltages on it, which is wonderful. But it's a very simple thing to wind your own low voltage winding. On this particular transformer, I just use ordinary bell wire, just to test it basically, because unlike a sort of standard transformer where you can't change anything without stripping the whole thing down and making it, you don't want to do that. But these things, because I would need 12 volts AC, that would actually be approximately 24 turns of bell wire. And it's got its own insulation on it. And for these external supplies, we're only talking about 20 or 30 milliamps. So you don't have to do any calculations, is this wire going to be thick enough, but I've just wrapped some round it. In fact, I've got it here. This is the wire that I've used, and it's telephone wire. It's just thin multi-core telephone wire. It wasn't quite long enough, so I joined a bit on. I wouldn't recommend that in the final product, but just this little bit of winding here is 12 volts. So, and you just secure it with tape, and then you have a transformer with an auxiliary winding on it, which won't affect the performance of the transformer at all. But all I did was wind 2 turns round it and see what the voltage was, and then thought, right, it's roughly two turns per volt, so it's a very simple thing even for me to work out how many turns I should need. So if I use the Farnell transformer, that's what I shall do, and if I use the other one, I've already got it.